Hey, what's up, people? Today's question is, what is the most like situation that you have been in? Story 1. Cable guy here. I once ended up at a nice house in the suburbs to do a morning call because the internet was not working. It didn't seem like anyone was home, so I radioed back to our dispatcher and was ready to drive away when someone opened the door. The lady owner of the house was there in a bathrobe. Sorry, I didn't hear you knock. Uh-huh. So I walk into the house and she says, "The computer is in the bedroom." That's pretty common actually, no big deal. So we head upstairs to her really big master bedroom. Twist. There are no less than 9 streaming cameras mounted on the walls, all pointed down at a huge 4-poster bed. She looks at me and says, "I'm so embarrassed." Lady, let's not pretend that you're embarrassed. Story 2. I was once invited over to a friend's house, in a different city from where I live, whom I'd not seen in about 5 years. We were going to have some drinks and watch movies, but we stayed in because there was a cyclone bearing down on the city. I evacuated from my city to hers and was staying with my parents. I got there. Her new GF was there, 17 years old. So my friend says she is going to go for a cool shower and quips before leaving the room in semi-darkness. "Do you want to come cool off too?" I of course say yes. So all 3 of us end up in the shower in darkness, fingers, tongues, and p***s everywhere. Migrate to the bedroom and continue our shenanigans. Wake up. Cyclone is gone. Both girls are still asleep. Ring a taxi and go back to my parents' house. I lost my shoes. I did not care. Story 3. Back in 1999, when I was doing my time in the German army, a few days before Christmas, we were sent out in our finest uniforms to collect money for charity. A comrade and me were sent to the nearest village, and after maybe an hour, we stood before a little nice house with a big front door and rang the bell. A gorgeous-looking naked blonde opened the door, and behind her in the living room, you could see a few people, cameras, lights, and some toys. We asked if she could spare a few marks for charity. She smiled, went to the living room to get her purse, gave us 20 marks, and wished us a happy Christmas. We both surely thanked her with the biggest possible smile and went to the next house. As we went to the next house, I looked at him and said, "Nobody will believe us." He looked at me with a big smile, shaken his head, and said, "Nobody." We had just laughed. For the rest of the time when we were in the same unit and looked occasionally at each other, we just had to burst out in laughter, shake our heads, and say, "Nobody." Story 4. I had gone on a date with a foreign girl, Polish, and it wasn't until we met properly that I learned how poor her English actually was. We could barely talk to each other. It worked a bit better when we talked online, as she had time to write it down. But on the second date, she asked if I could teach her English. But the computer being in my bedroom, we went up and I loaded up Google Translator, put on a bit of background music, and F11D that to full screen. We barely talked as we sat side by side on the translator. Then she typed something in Polish and his translation. "Are you going to kiss me yet?" Needless to say, we didn't use a translator for the rest of the night. Story 5. I went out to a club with a group. 2 of the girls were roommates, and they had a 3rd girl couch surfing at their place. I ended up being invited to their place after the bar closed. Roommate number 2 immediately disappeared into her room. Roommate number 1 and couch surfer and I spent some time chatting, eating, and drinking. Couch surfer nodded off, and roommate 1 and I went back to her room for some prolonged sexy times. A few hours later, I woke up, slip on my boxers, and go out to the kitchen for a drink of water. Couch surfer was awake, or I woke her up. She walked over to me in the kitchen, taking her clothes off on the way. So, what the hell, sexy times with couch surfers on the giant beanbag? Afterwards, I decide I probably should go back to the bedroom to get my clothes. Roommate number 1 woke up and insisted that I come back to bed and spoon her. Well, spooning led to another round of sexy times, and we soon realized that couch surfer was watching us from the hall. It turned into a semi-regular thing for the few months that couch surfer was there. I would bang one of them, and the other would watch. They didn't have any interest in making it an actual threesome. They just took turns and watched. Story 6. I once had with an on-duty police officer. Unfortunately, my life isn't a perfect. It wasn't like he pulled me over and I was like, "Oh, officer, I'll do anything to not get a ticket." I had met him at a bar, gave him my number, and we chit-chatted here and there for a few weeks. One night, I get a text that he's basically sitting in an empty lot in his car from 7 p.m. to midnight. He asks me to come keep him company. One thing leads to another. I'm bent over a cop car getting fucked by the long dick of the law. Well, the average-sized dick of the law. Story 7. After a moderately heavy night of drinking, I let my SO bring a lesbian friend she'd befriended over the last couple of months home with us. The friend was in no way interested in me, and was also quite shy but heavily infatuated with my bisexual SO. They fooled around for quite a bit before my SO asked me if she could fuck her. I agreed and was asked to leave the room. At this point, however, I demanded that if I couldn't join in, I'd at least be allowed to watch. They agreed, and I decided to make it into a special live show, so I rolled a joint, opened up my finest whiskey, a special 21-year-old Lagavulin I actually bought in Islay for my fellow enthusiasts, and had a beautiful scenery for 40 minutes while I contemplated whiskey, the universe, life, and the sheer beauty of the female form. Was glorious, and in some ways felt preferable to joining in. Story 8. High school. A female friend's mother was very touchy. Whenever I would go over to her place, her mother would find excuses to be around me, sit right next to me with one leg on mine and an arm around me, talk to me with her lips way too close to mine, etc. I can't stress enough how difficult it is to not be fully erect when you are a teenage boy in situations like these. The funny part was that she knew her mother was doing this and only did it with me, and she was quite embarrassed. Nothing really materialized though, which is both a good and a bad thing. Story 9. I was drinking at a friend's house with 2 girls and 4 boys. I was sort of seeing one of the girls for a couple of weeks. So me and the other guys are all sitting in one of the bedrooms, and I go to the top floor looking for the girls. They are sitting and talking, so I join them for a few minutes. Being all quite drunk, one of the girls suggested a 3-way kiss. A kiss where all 3 people are involved at once. After doing this, I jokingly suggested, "We should have a 3." Haha. Later on, I leave the girls and go back down to the guys while the girls say, "We'll be down in a bit." As I'm downstairs drinking again, one of the girls walks in, and she's just wearing a bra and thong now. Obviously, everyone stops and stares, and she walks over towards me, pushing me back in my chair, straddles me, and starts kissing me. Once she pulled away, she pulled me by the hand and said, "Let's do it then." She led me back upstairs where I found her friend, also in a bra and pants. And the rest, as they say, is history. This is most definitely my proudest moment. It was also the first week of university, so my mind was blown about what lay ahead in my future here. Unfortunately, this was the peak of my sexual experience. Story 10. Tradesman here. True story. I was working away when the young and attractive housewife appeared in front of me, wearing nothing but lingerie. I'm in total shock that this kind of thing does not happen. She said nothing and just stood there with a sexy smile on her face. You probably want to know what I did next. Unfortunately, I'll never know either, as her husband pulled into the driveway and she ran away. It was awkward talking to him when he came in, like shaky, stuttering awkward. Story 11. Pizza delivery. A hot woman answers the door wearing flimsy silk pajamas, like shorts and a tank top. I wanted to pay with a bunch of leftover coins that dropped on the floor. Bends over, I can see everything. So I just stand there like an idiot and wait for her to pick up my goddamn money. I had no more deliveries anyway. Story 12. I cleaned pools in college and had a customer's wife come out to the pool in a little black dress and start talking to me about how her husband is out of town for a few days. And she could really use a man to help her with some things inside. I was so oblivious at the moment that I said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm sorry ma'am, I just clean pools. I don't have much experience with home repairs." Story 13. Back in college, I was delivering pizza and was walking around this apartment complex trying to find the right address to drop the pizzas at. This woman, about my age, jogged by me in tight workout clothes and gave me an obvious up-down as she jogged past me. She was kind of extra bouncy when she jogged past me, like she was trying to accentuate her jiggly, ladylike parts. Do women do that? I was a bit oblivious, although I enjoyed the view, but then I realized she had stopped jogging and was standing behind me a few feet, jog bouncing in place. I turned and looked at her because I thought she was going to say something. She did the sexy lip bite and a weird sexy wiggle, then jogged away, leaving me confused, aroused, and pizza-laden. And no, it wasn't an extra large sausage pizza. Story 14. As a pizza delivery guy, this cute black girl, who was a regular, answered the door in purple lingerie. Looking great. She invited me inside to pay for her food and took me to the kitchen to get her money, which is not how you normally pay the delivery guy. I would have made a move except on the way to the kitchen. We walked by 4 or 5 dudes just sitting in the living room, feeling suspicious. Story 15. In college, a group of people would always come over for a movie night every Friday. Tons of people, all friends, all kinds of fun. Somebody invited a new girl, and as it was time to wrap things up, people were headed out. She said, "I just need to use the restroom." Whatever, people need to pee. 5 minutes and a lot fewer people later, she walks out naked, grabs me by the member, and says, "I'm hungry and horny. You're gonna fix both." Story 16. I was at a friend's house in the mid-2000s. She had 2 of her friends over. We ordered pizza and were having a few drinks. One by one, the 3 girls disappeared into the upstairs bedroom. After a while of me being alone and getting bored, I went to that room. When I opened the door, they were already going. I stood there in awe. One of the girls noticed me and called me over. What a night that was. Story 17. In my fraternity room, I wake up from the door, getting pounded on like a herd of drunk elephants. Open door, girlfriend comes in drunk with another girl I don't know, whispers, "I hope you like her." And then they start going to town on each other. After they did their thing for a few minutes, they pulled me in there as well. 'Twas a good night for young Irish, yes sir. Well people, so much for today's last story. Remember that you can write me some of your funniest stories in the comments. I'm collecting the best ones to make a video with your best stories.